Welcome to Canterbury Cast, the podcast where you'll find sermons, conversations, and all things Canterbury UMC. We're glad you're here.
Welcome back to Canterbury Cast, where we share stories of real grace and real love in the midst of real life. I'm your host, Jeff Nix, and in this episode, we're joined by someone many of you know and love, Dr. Rick Owen, to talk about his new book, Patchwork, Alabama. It's a collection of short stories that are funny, heartfelt, and full of faith. Snapshots of small-town life that remind us of a simpler time and the beauty of ordinary moments. Whether you grew up in a small town or just appreciate life's simpler rhythms, Patchwork will make you laugh, think, and maybe even tear up a little. Rick, first of all, congratulations on Patchwork, Alabama. Tell us how this book came about. What inspired you?
Well, I have to tell you, the inspiration for this comes from over 50 years of serving churches across North Alabama. So Patchwork, Alabama, technically is a town that I created out of all the different patchwork people I met and places that I've lived and been a part of, from small town to the county seat town and church, and to all those places. None of these people are real. This is not a real place, but it's a compilation of all the wonderful folks I met.
Oh, wonderful. The book feels a little bit like sitting on our front porch and swapping stories, some funny, some deeply moving. How would you describe the overall feel of Patchwork? You
pretty much got that. I grew up sitting on the front porch of my grandfather and grandmother's front porch in Florence, Alabama, in the mill community there. And I listened to my mom tell family stories. Yeah. She's the one who inspired me to actually start writing short stories when I was in the 5th grade. And I had to write one once a month all the way till I was a senior in high school.
Oh, wow.
And got a love for doing that. Wish I had those stories, but I don't have those anymore.
Oh, no.
So you did pretty much right. When I started writing this book, I discovered I went back in my mind and my heart to sitting on that front porch, watching my grandfather unfortunately smoke cool cigarettes, drink coffee, and swap stories.
Oh, fun. Oh, those are great memories, I'm sure.
They are.
Yeah. So, was there one story that was especially personal to you, or that surprised you once you saw it on paper?
You know, not really. I think all of those stories are based in some kind of truth, something that either I might have experienced or at least I watched happen or observed somewhere along the way.
Sure.
The one that probably is the spark for it all is the Patchwork crash. And that story is about an altar guild that does not resemble any altar guild around, but realizing that they were people who spent so much time making sure that others in a church celebrated in a way that was not only appropriate but meaningful. And at the end of that story, it simply ends with a very simple sentence that says, "And now we know why we're doing what we're doing in Advent." And so that beautiful kind of sense is what really helps inspire me to do more stories, but it also helps me every Christmas to look at the crutch somewhere in the church, the Christmas tree and the burning candles, and realize there was a lot of love went into what those people did to make us enjoy being a part of that season.
For sure. Yes. The book, it really captures the small town charm. Everybody knows everybody, and life moves at its own pace. What do you think we lose when we move away from communities like this, or the idea of communities like this?
Sure. It is true that in small towns and small communities, doesn't always have to be a town. It can be the wide spot in the road.
Sure.
I served a church that was technically a wide spot in the road, and now they're going to be mad at me when I say it, but it's in Rock Run, Alabama.
Okay.
There's not a service station. There's not a grocery store. It's 2 churches, a Methodist church and a Baptist church, and a rock at a crossroads.
Oh, wow.
But that was technically a small community in town. Small towns do know everybody in the town. for good or for bad. But when anything happens that affects adversely anybody in that community, the whole community either grieves, they either help and assist, or they do the best they can to make it the best community it is. That's what we lose, that sense of companionship, the sense of not only are you a part of our community, but you're a part of our family in this community as well. We lose that.
Yep.
And there's also the fact that small towns come in many forms. The county seat town is much larger. The town that has a few stores is that. I lived in Florence, Alabama. That was a county seat town. I lived in Scottsboro, a smaller county seat town. I lived in Spring Garden, Alabama, which was nothing more than a post office and a kind of a gas station general store about 4 or 5 miles away. And then I've lived in Birmingham and then lived a short time in Atlanta. So all of those have their unique experiences. Sure. But for the small town, particularly, this Patchwork looks a lot like Town Creek, Alabama, which is one street over the railroad tracks with a cotton gin.
Oh, wow. Wow. I've got a lot of good memories there.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Rick, you're a pastor, but you're also an actor, and you've done some stand-up comedy.
Yes.
So, and your sense of humor really shows up throughout the book. How do you think laughter and storytelling work together in helping people see truth and grace?
I think that the reality of using humor allows us to be vulnerable to people, and for the ability of a preacher to preach the sermon that they have to preach. Sometimes you're looking at lots of research and you've got lots of things to read and to share and to quote, but sometimes it's in the story that reaches to the heart of the people. People listen to the story. We all have our family stories, mm-hmm. and so preaching becomes sharing a family story from the gospel or the church itself. I also think that, I did do some stand-up. That's a reality. I think I learned at the age of probably 19 or 20 when I first tried that with sermons and preaching. I realized that people were listening to the soundbite. It was no longer the long, drawn-out sermons, an hour long or 30 to 45 minutes long. But often you could preach that long, but they would pick up one little piece of it. It was the soundbite. And comedians are the absolute best at creating the soundbite that somebody will pick up on.
True.
Every comedian has some kind of tagline or soundbite that picks up on that. Next time you're listening to one, you'll hear it a dozen times. And in some cases, there are comedians that actually the crowd responds even before they say it. You've heard it from lots of different folks. Jeff Foxworthy is the one, that has his redneck signs that he does. And so that the reality is that's the way we do. Now, also it goes to Bible study, to be honest with you. One of my favorite Gospels to do a Bible study on is the Gospel of John, which I think is one long story, maybe created by a group of people who sat down and said, you remember when Jesus came through our town? You remember when he did this? Well, put it in there. And for that reason, there's a lot of things in there that are not in the other Gospels. And I think it's because it was the art of the story. They were reliving the story and they were living it out. And to be honest with you, there's a little bit of humor in there too, and we need not miss it. When Jesus standing at Lazarus' grave, I love the King James version of this. Though sometimes that's not what I use all the time, but the King James version, it says that as he's standing by the grave, Jesus says, "Roll away the stone," and Lazarus' sister leans into Jesus and says, "But Lord, he stinketh."
Right.
You got to know somebody had to laugh about that one.
Oh yeah. One of the things I love about Patchwork is how grace sneaks in to everyday life. Funny situation, conversation, simple act of kindness. How do you see faith woven through these stories?
Sure. I think that the center of this whole thing, the book itself, or the stories that we tell, our family stories, usually we laugh a little bit and we cry a little bit at them, and that's the grace and the love that comes forward in that. Not only did I sit on the porch listening to my grandfather tell stories, but I also spent every holiday around my grandmother and grandfather's table eating Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner, and the process was very simple. It was you eat and you enjoy, then you retire to the living room or to the porch where you talked about football and politics, and in the end of that, you always knew that no matter what anybody disagreed with, no matter who they may not have liked to say what they said that offended somebody in that group, because it was often in that family, in the end, they were still family. And the grace that they experienced as a family overcame any of the anxieties that life brought. So grace and love were a part of our story. Grace and love, a part of the gospel story, is the reason that we connect with that. So in these stories, there's a lot of grace, even with, I might as well mention it, even with a man who catches a lady's hair on fire at the Christmas Eve service, but in the end, he kind of makes up for it. Or maybe it's the experience of a preacher going into a parsonage that had some very graphic portraits that probably his sister couldn't see for a little while until they got it cleaned up, because you just don't put a full portrait of Adam without clothes on in the dining room of a parsonage. But anyway, that was one of the members' interpretation of that. But in the end, that grace and that love overcame all of those difficult things that we have to deal with. Each of those stories, in their own way, is kind of filled with the grace and love that all of us experience through Christ.
Yeah. I particularly enjoyed the story of Bubba. And wow.
So I will share with you, that's the only name of somebody that I used that it was a real person.
Okay.
Bubba was the most incredible individual I ever met. He was the loving, caring young man. There's lots of Bubba stories that I won't share or do. I think one of my favorite was the story of Bubba when he wanted to sing so bad a solo on Sunday morning. My dad, I was a teenager. My dad was the pastor of the church, and he like me sang in the key of Z, and which was hardly off key and very loud. And on Sunday morning we'd do that. And we actually gave him the choir director actually gave him a chance to sing a solo one Sunday, and I will never forget what he sang. Up from the grave he arose, hallelujah, amen, and sat down. And the beauty of that moment of a mentally handicapped young man expressing his faith truly was, as I said in the story of Bubba and the Christmas Angels, the only prophet I ever knew in person.
If you could describe Patchwork, Alabama, in one sentence, what do you think it'd be?
That's a difficult thing. I'm thinking of all the stories that are not in the book that I didn't put in for other reasons, one reason or another. If I could say it in one sentence, I would say it is a gift of love to anybody who lived in a small town and experienced the grace and the love that community surrounded them with, and laughed their way along whatever came their way. They laughed their way through it, and they loved their way through it, and they were filled with grace because of the people who cared about each other. Yep. That's more than one sentence, but
that's okay.
But a storyteller can never stop with just one.
It's a wonderful book, and it really gives people a glimpse into what small town life is like. Who I'm sure a lot of these listeners don't have that experience of living in a small town, and this is certainly a way for them to kind of get an idea of what that's like. It's almost like a Hallmark movie.
Yeah, I just didn't kiss anybody at the end.
Right. It had all the good parts.
That's right. Left all of that's right.
Oh, goodness. So, finally, what do you hope readers take away or maybe feel when they close that last page of this book?
So I hope that they've experienced, if they've never experienced a small town, they've experienced a little bit of a town that has maybe one street that goes over the railroad track, and the people that were a part of that loved and cared for each other. And if they have lived in that small town, I hope that they remembered for a while. And in fact, a few people that have talked to me have been very gracious about the book and appreciative to me, and I appreciate them doing that, have shared with me, I lived in a small town just like that. And they told me stories, their own stories about that small town. And if it does that, it accomplished more than the purpose for which I wrote the book.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing the stories and the heart behind Patchwork, Alabama. It's a reminder that faith, grace, and joy can be found in the most ordinary places, and that sometimes the simplest stories say the most about who we are. Patchwork, Alabama. It's available now wherever you get your books, and if you haven't read it yet, we highly recommend you picking up a copy. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about what's going on at Canterbury, follow us on social media or visit our website at canterburyumc.org.